Hi, everyone. We'll be starting soon. We've got about 4 more minutes until 11 o'clock Eastern time, but I wanted to go ahead and open up the broadcast. Make sure everything's working correctly on this end. Are you able to hear me? I see that we have one viewer right now. Can we do a sound check? There's a group chat on the side right of your screen. If you can hear me, can you type in that you hear me, please? Well, it's 9:59. We'll get started in just a moment. All right, it's 11 o'clock Eastern time, 10 o'clock Central time for me, and I'd like to say good morning and thank you for joining me. I notice we only have one live viewer right now, and that's okay because this will be broadcast and saved for future viewers as well. So welcome, and we'll go ahead and get started. Let me do a screen share. So my name is Valentina Gonzalez. I am a professional development specialist for elementary ESL, and I've only been doing this role in my district for a couple of years. I've been in education since 1997, so it's been a while. I've had many roles in education, primarily in elementary, in 3rd and 4th grades, but also as an ESL instructional support specialty teacher serving kindergarten through 5th grade classrooms and co-teaching in those classrooms. And as I co-taught in kinder through 5th grade classrooms, I was really able to see a lot of different classrooms, not only in my school, but also district-wide. And it was very easy as I walked into classrooms to be able to pick out which classrooms were very ELL friendly and which classrooms maybe needed some guidance with how to make the classroom a little more ELL friendly. And it wasn't that the teacher didn't want their classroom to be ELL friendly, it was maybe just they didn't know how to do that. And so as I worked in the buildings and conducted learning walks as well throughout our district, I started to make notes of the things I was noticing that made a classroom more ELL friendly and supportive to the English language learners. And as we know, ELLs are one of the fastest growing groups in the United States. So basically, if you teach in a classroom in Texas and in the United States, you probably have at least one English language learner. In Texas, the ratio is about 4 in elementary school in a classroom. So what do you think an ELL-friendly classroom looks and sounds like? And for this activity, what I wanted to do was try to do a menti.com, but since there's only one person viewing live, it may not really come out too well. But we could try it, or you can just jot down or type out 3 to 5 of your top thoughts. What comes to mind with an ELL-friendly classroom? What does it look like and sound like? So I'm going to exit this slideshow for a moment and share with you the Menti that we could go to, or you can jot down or type out your thoughts in the comments. So here's the Menti. You would go to menti.com in your web browser and type in the code 386659. And respond to the question, what do you think an ELL-friendly classroom looks and sounds like? Now, if you're not feeling like using the Menti because there's just one of us, we could always just go back to typing in our answer right here in the chat screen. So which do you prefer? I'll give you a moment to think. And I'm typing a message to you right now. I'm not really seeing an answer here. So we're going to go ahead and move on. And if you decide you'd like to answer that question, just let me know and we'll come back to it. No problem. So I'm going to screen share again, okay? So during our time together this morning, I have a few goals. We're going to explore the elements of a classroom that supports English language learners as they learn both content and acquire language. The first thing we're going to talk about is what we would see in an ELL-friendly classroom. So if you walk into a classroom, how do you know it's conducive and supportive to our English language learners? One thing you might notice right offhand when you walk into a classroom that supports ELLs is that there might be small group instruction happening. If there's a co-teacher in the classroom, then they might follow, the two teachers in the classroom may be using alternative teaching or station teaching to allow for a smaller teacher-student ratio. If there's only one teacher in the classroom, that's okay. Small group instruction can still happen. So the teacher will pull a small group for either targeted goals, so the students have similar goals they need to reach, while the other students are either working in centers or they're working on independent writing. And another way to utilize small group instruction is during that ELD time. Small group instruction is really important for our ELLs because it lowers the affective filter. So our students are more apt to answer questions in that smaller setting. They feel more comfortable answering and participating. Small group is also really great because the teacher can take notice of the students' needs more easily than if everyone is in a whole group setting. So the instruction can be more tailored to students' individual needs, both language and content. In an ELL-friendly classroom, anchor charts are very important. But it's not just, that the classroom has to have anchor charts. In fact, at the beginning of the year, there may be no anchor charts at all, because the important part of having anchor charts that support ELLs and all students, actually, is that they're made with the students, hearing the language that happens as the anchor charts are made. Then the students can actually use these anchor charts while they're working independently. Anchor charts are also more supportive to our students when they're color chunked, because research tells us that when we color chunk, the brain is more apt to understand and put those individual pieces together. So if I put all of one certain content area in red, my brain can remember that piece of information better. There where it says artifact, I'll show you on the next slide exactly what I mean by that. But when I'm working with a small group of students and I refer to a specific anchor chart that we made previously, I might make a tiny anchor chart for my students on a sticky note and give it to them to put in their readers or writers notebook. And that becomes an artifact for them that they can utilize while they're working independently. And then anchor charts that are supportive for our ELLs are also interactive. So the students actually use them. Not only are they made with the students, but the students actually interact with them. They may come up and add words to them. They may come up and add pictures. They may add on to the anchor chart. I remember years ago, and this definitely was a problem that I had years ago. I would start off my school year with beautiful posters and just great I don't think you could call them anchor charts, but posters on my walls. My walls were very colorful and gorgeous. But now that I think back to it, was that just wallpaper, or was it actually useful to my students? It's real important that our anchor charts are truly useful for the students. Can they take that anchor chart and apply it on a daily basis or during that unit of study? And if they can apply it across other content areas, even better. I once walked into a classroom during a learning walk, and we asked the students about a specific anchor chart that was on the front board. And we asked the student to tell us about the anchor chart. And he actually said, I don't know what that poster is about. We've never used it. Well, that right there tells us that that poster or anchor chart is not useful. It's basically wallpaper. And it was getting prime real estate in the classroom, right there in the front. When we asked the same child, can you show us an anchor chart in the classroom that you find very helpful, maybe like the most helpful anchor chart? He actually had to get up, walk us to the other side of the room behind a cabinet. This awesome anchor chart was not getting the real estate it needed. The little picture there that says bug, that is actually an artifact that I gave to one of the students I was working with that helped them with their not only rhyming, but sounding out words. The second anchor chart is from the 7 Steps to a Language-Rich Interactive Classroom, which is a book that I love and use all of the time with campuses throughout my district. This is actually step 1, and it's what I teach my kids at the very beginning of the year to help them realize that they will be accountable for their learning. So if you don't know an answer, here are some things that you can do about that. You can say, may I please have some more information? And I create this anchor chart with them, and we talk about each one. So it's not just wallpaper in the classroom. Remember these? This is an old word wall, and I have to admit, I used to have a word wall that was very similar to this. This is an example of a word wall that may not be very supportive with our ELLs. It does have words, it is alphabetic, but the word walls that are really going to be supportive to our ELLs, it's not going to be your average word wall. A word wall that is content specific. It's going to be unit specific. So in this example, we were studying historical figures, such as Amelia Earhart, George Washington Carver, and as you can see, other historical figures as well. And we were talking about their individualism, inventiveness, and how that influenced and shaped our country. And the students then filled in the columns underneath individualism and inventiveness. And the learning was amazing. They took charge of their learning. So the next thing that you're really going to notice in a classroom that supports ELLs is that there will be content and language objectives. And even, when I was in the classroom a few years ago, we did work on content objectives when we were lesson planning. And I remember, several years ago when, in our district anyway, we were asked to start putting those objectives on the board. And there was this buzz around the building about, we felt like it was the reason why we needed to put those objectives on the board was more for, when administrators walked by so they would know what we were teaching. But in reality, I now realize that's not what they were there for. Yeah, that was nice that administrators kind of knew what we were teaching, but it was really for the students. So You see this picture, you're probably wondering, why is there a shopping cart full of junk? Let me tell you why I have this shopping cart full of junk. Because I had this realization that when you don't have content and language objectives for your students, it's similar to going to the grocery store without a shopping list for your students. Okay, I'm going to venture and say that we've all gone to the grocery store before without a shopping list. And if you can just put yourself in that position, go there in your mind. I'm going to go there in my mind. The time I went to the grocery store, it's happened many times. And at first, I don't even know what I'm going to get. What am I going to get? What am I going to get? I'll grab this. I'll grab that. I'll start grabbing random things. Most of it becomes junk. I've got a cart full of junk. And then when I get home, I spent a ton of money. And then when I get home, I look around, I'm like, what did I buy? I can't even put a solid meal together because it's all just random stuff that doesn't really relate, and I can't even put a solid meal together. Well, that's what happens with our students when we don't provide them with content and language objectives. They come into the lesson, to the day, not knowing what their goal is. What are they supposed to get out of this? And for our ELLs, it's an even bigger struggle because they're learning both language and content. So they're trying to think, oh, should I learn this? Should I be pulling this information? Is this what's important to remember today? And it's just overwhelming. And then when they leave, they don't know. They don't have anything solid to say, that's what I learned. They can't pull a full meal together out of it. And maybe that's why they go home, and when their parents ask them, what did you learn today? They say, I don't know, nothing. So content and language objectives, we've got to put those in. We've got to get the kids to understand what they are, have the kids repeat them, and by the end of the lesson, have the kids kind of rate themselves. Did I get that? Do I understand? Did I get the content and language objectives? How successful was I? We're going to move on now to the hear. What are we going to hear in a classroom that supports our ELLs? The one thing that you're going to hear is some structured conversations, because we don't want the teacher to be doing all of the talking. If the teacher is doing all the talking and the students are not, then there may be a problem. We want our kids to be internalizing. And in order to internalize, they have to verbalize. It's just like us. When you have a problem, you need to talk it out. And sometimes just by talking it out, you resolve that problem. Talking allows us that opportunity to negotiate for meaning. One way to get our ELLs really talking and using academic language is by using some structured conversations. This is one structure that I absolutely love. It's called QSSA, and it is something I learned from the 7 Steps to a Language-Rich Interactive Classroom. Again, a book that I absolutely believe in and love. In QSSA, we pose a question, an open-ended question to our students. It's best if these questions are pre-planned so that they're high-quality questions. Then we give them a STEM to answer that question. So we pose the question to the whole class or the group if we're working in a small group, and we give them a STEM. We let them think about how they are going to answer that question, and we tell them, when you're ready to finish that sentence stem, give me this signal. And it could be put your thumb up, it could be stand up, it could be hands on your hips, any signal, and varying the signal helps. Once everyone has the signal, and you do want to wait till everyone has the signal, because total participation is key here. If you don't wait it out, then you're going to have some kids that realize you don't mean business and you're not going to require them to participate. So wait till everyone has the signal, and then you're going to have them share. And you can structure that share part how you want to. It could be that they share with their AB partner. It could be that they share with their, winter partner, share with their table. However you structure the share, that's up to you. And the final part of QSSA is the assess. And in the assess, you're going to randomly call on a couple of students to share their answer. So the random part is important because we want to randomize and rotate when we call on students instead of always calling on the same students over and over again. So we're giving some equity to calling on students. And at this point, we're assessing for understanding and clarifying any misconceptions. Another thing we're going to hear when we walk into a classroom that's supportive of ELLs is we're going to hear a lot of group work, groups talking, collaborative groups. So the kids are going to be in conversation together, and they're going to be discussing, and there's going to be that positive interdependence. It may be that they're working in pairs. It could be they're working in triads, but there's going to be a lot of collaboration and working together rather than working in isolation. So what you're going to hear the teacher doing, she's going to facilitate a lot of the structured conversations and group work. And while she's doing that, you may hear her repeat, because there are times when our ELLs need that repetition. You may hear her rephrase the question. You may hear her clarify so that students are understanding what the question is about. You may hear her paraphrase, and you certainly will hear her give wait time. So that wait time is very important. An extra 3 seconds of wait time can really encourage a lot more participation. And there's some good research out there on that wait time. And if you've ever tried it, even with adult learners, you can see how amazing that wait time truly is. Another thing that you will hear in an ELL-friendly classroom is you'll hear students using sentence stems and frames. Now, I would never require my students to use sentence stems and frames, but they're there for the students who need them when they need them. So they're definitely a scaffold, and like all scaffolds, they are meant to be released when they're no longer necessary. So these are examples of some sentence stems that are given to students. They're on a ring, and I love these because each student has these individually and they can use them as needed. These are sentence stems. And here are some other examples that I can't remember where I got these, but I thought they were really nice and colorful and good examples. The beauty of giving our students sentence stems is we're putting the language in their mouths. The academic language that we want to hear them use, we're putting it in their mouths. And if they can say it, then they'll be able to write it. And so that's what we want to do. That's our goal when we're using sentence stems and frames. One of the key things when we're working with ELLs is that we're really planning for instruction. And it is a cyclical process, but it begins by identifying students' language levels. The first step when we plan for instruction of ELLs is simply to identify the students' language levels in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And they're all going to be different. Then we're going to select accommodations that support each language level. I know in my district there has been some talk and controversy about when we're supposed to be looking at accommodations, but the important part is that after you've identified language levels, then you look at accommodations that support those students, because we're planning for instruction. So we plan to use those accommodations. The next step would be to provide those opportunities for listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So in that step, we're going to be utilizing those sentence frames, and we're going to be asking probing questions, really encouraging a lot of participation. Step 4, we're going to select supplementary materials that support each student in learning new concepts. So it may be adaptive text. It may be that we're going to be using a lot of visuals or manipulatives or pre-teaching vocabulary. And then step 5, monitoring progress, which is key. In Texas, we use proficiency level descriptors to help us monitor progress, and basically they're rubrics for listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And they help us to ensure that we are providing enough support so that our ELLs are advancing in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. But if we don't monitor that progress throughout the year with formative assessments, then their progress is going to lag. I thought this was worthy of sharing with you because in an ELL-friendly classroom, it's key that we're scaffolding for our learners. So there are 3 types of scaffolds. The verbal scaffold is through, obviously verbally. So we're going to slow our speech. And that doesn't mean we're going to dumb it down. We are just going to enunciate words a little bit more clearly and have a space between each word. Recasting means that if a student uses a word incorrectly in a sentence, we're not going to call them out while they're talking and embarrass them. We're going to say it correctly in our response to them. So if a student comes to us and says, "Mrs. Gonzalez, yesterday I go to the movies," I'm not going to say, "No, no, 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 no. You say it like this, Mrs. Gonzalez, yesterday I went to the movies." I don't want to embarrass the student and stifle their learning. Instead, I'm going to recast and say, "Oh, how nice. Yesterday you went to the movies? I went to the movies last week." So we recast by saying it in the correct way. Okay, verbal is also repeating, rephrasing, and thinking aloud. So when you're modeling a math problem, we're thinking aloud the process. When you're reading a book, you're thinking aloud the process. When you're writing, you're thinking aloud the process. The second type of scaffold is the procedural. And that's just the structure of the classroom. And we know that ELLs benefit from routines. So really making sure we keep to those structures. We do need some whole group instruction, but we also need that small group. And then the one-on-one time with our ELLs is critical as well. And then the last one, instructional, I think this is the most common scaffold that we as teachers give to our ELLs, but the top 2 are just as important, if not even more important. I think instructional scaffolds are concrete, so we just feel like we know how to give those, and these are the graphic organizers and story maps and mentor text and exemplars, examples of what we want our students to achieve. This is an actual picture of a tree from my yard, and it reminded me of why we have scaffolds and why we need to release them. Because this tree, when it was a little bitty baby tree, needed a scaffold or else it would have fallen over. Those stakes on the side help the tree stand up, help it from being blown over in the wind. But it doesn't need those scaffolds for all of its life. Actually, if we don't remove those scaffolds, it does more harm to the tree than good. And we need to remember that for our students, that if we hold on to those scaffolds for too long, we're doing more harm than we are good. So we have to do a gradual release with our scaffolds. It's the same scaffold. Accommodating for our students levels the playing field for them. And I thought about, this little girl who she needs a drink of water, but she's not tall enough to get to the fountain. Should we wait till next year to give her that water? No, of course not. She needs that water. And so we give her an accommodation. Her mom or her sister, whoever that is, gave her a knee to kind of prop herself up on to access the water that she needs. Our students are the same way. They need grade level curriculum. Should we wait a year to give it to them when they're ready? No. We have to give them accommodations that help them access the grade level curriculum now because they need it now. The language is their barrier, and we have to accommodate to help them reach the grade level curriculum. They have the brain power. They have the cognitive ability. They can do it. We have to support them until they no longer need it. So if you're wondering, well, how can my administrator, or if you are an administrator, how can my administrator help me ensure that our school helps ELLs, is supportive? And these are also things you can do in your classroom too. Our schools should create a welcoming environment for all cultures. So throughout the walls of our halls in the building, we should see multicultural pictures, words, maps, friendly faces, a warm place for our families to come to. Number 2, hold professional development for all staff. If your administrator is not already planning professional development to support ELLs on your campus, maybe give them some ideas of professional development that's coming up that will support the ELLs on your campus. Maybe you could lead some PD on that. Number 3, ensure that ESL specialists and content teachers have time to plan together. If this isn't already happening on your campus, be an advocate for this to happen on your campus. Many years ago on my campus, it wasn't happening. And so I just met with the principal, and I asked for it to happen and gave the reasons why it should, and then it did. It was just as simple as advocating and asking. And the leaders on your campus should be monitoring the progress of ELLs on the campus. It's a priority. If it's a priority for leaders, it'll be a priority for everyone in the building. You can find this on my blog. It's listed at the bottom, as well as this. And this is just a one-pager of what you should notice in an ELL-friendly classroom. I wanted to share with you some of the awesome resources that I used to help me. These are my go-to resources, and I have a few others with me right now that I'll pop up on the screen in just a moment. But Larry Ferlazzo, he's a great advocate. Not only is his book awesome, but his blog and all of the articles that he writes are great. John Seidlitz and his books, the SIOP model, all excellent resources. This is my Twitter handle, my email, and my blog. I share a lot of information. I'm big on advocating and sharing and doing what I can to support ELLs. And I enjoy collaborating with any like-minded people. So I'm going to come back now to my screen. So I did want to share with you a few other resources that I used. Like I said, this book by Larry is awesome. If you're an administrator or a leader on your campus, ELLs in Texas, even if you're not in Texas, this is a great book. This book was on the previous page. It's a book that I refer to a lot. I've done a lot of PD on campuses using this book. It's also awesome. And then my Making Content Comprehensible for English Language Learners, love this book too. So thank you all for joining, and I hope you got some good information, and I'll see you later. Bye.